Hello and welcome to Movie Brain Fart, a new series examining films to an obsessive level. This week we've got the new Star Wars The Force Awakens teaser, which I will thoroughly probe and examine in detail. So, let's get started. So we open up on a new Lucasfilm logo now, without the familiar green hue, which I quite like, it's quite ominous, along with the music. And this is the new planet of Jakku, not Tatooine as we originally thought. And we see a shot very reminiscent of the shots in A New Hope of Luke's speeder. It's drawing our eye slowly to reveal Imperial Star Destroyer crashed into the sand. Immediately this says two things. It says, this is the aftermath of the cataclysmic civil war that we had in the original three films. The scope is going to be huge, and it immediately leads you to question, well, what happens after that war? It's also saying this is going to be a mix of the familiar and a whole new level of epic that wasn't possible 30 years ago. So, at no point in any of the original movies did we ever get to see something like this. We've seen, this shot says, look, it's the stuff you used to like, got an X-Wing, got a Star Destroyer, but it's a whole new context.
Force is strong in my
Then we get Luke's voiceover. Now this is not a new voiceover. This is not a new recording. A lot of people seem to think it is. Some people even seem to be confused about who it is. It's not just clearly Luke. It's Luke's dialogue from Return of the Jedi when he speaks to his sister. The only difference here is they've inversed some of the lines. So
you have that power too. In time, you'll learn to use it as I have. Force is strong in my family. My father has it. I have it. And my sister has it.
now becomes,
Force is strong in my family. My father has it. I have it. And my sister has it. You have that power too.
the only additional element is that if you listen very, very carefully, there's an echo behind every single line from Return of the Jedi, and that echo is of modern-day Mark Hamill, just repeating each one of those lines.
The Force is strong in my family. My father has it. I have it. My sister has it. You have that power too.
Then we get this shot of Luke and R2. This is, I am definitely hedging my bets on this being Luke. It's his right hand that's mechanical, like the originals. The only difference is there is no skin on this one. Now that could be for a range of different reasons. The skin might have burnt off through combats and accidents. His hand might have been chopped off again, and he decided to opt for the more mechanical look his father had. Some people have sort of speculated this is like Mustafar or some other volcanic planet. I think it's a lot more simple than that. He's sitting by a campfire. You can see the embers flying past him. Smoke is very localized. I've brightened up the image here so that you can see where he's sitting, and it seems to me, at first I thought it might have been in a cave, but with the image much more brightened, it looks like he's sitting on a beach with some cliffs on the background, and that would match with some of the rumours that we've had and the locations that we know they've shot in. It's interesting that he's wearing white underneath the cloak, which is a good counterbalance for the last time we saw him when he was wearing black robes in Return of the Jedi. The hand is very much reminiscent of Anakin's, though. Here we get a shot of a lightsaber, not just any old saber. That's the original saber that Anakin had, which Obi-Wan then gave to Luke in A New Hope. But interestingly, Luke lost this in The Empire Strikes Back, in Cloud City. Now, it's great to see it again, but I have some trouble understanding how they would have got it. The way I always watch The Empire Strikes Back, there's that shot when Luke falls out the vents. Immediately as he falls out, you see what appears to be his hand plummeting down into the depths of the clouds. Now, I always assumed that the hand was still clutching onto the lightsaber, and therefore the lightsaber is gone, because, you know, Bespin is a gas planet, and, you know, if an object falls down into a gas giant, unlikely to ever find it again. I mean, there's no surface there, so... The feasible option here is that what we saw fall was just his hand, and somehow rigor mortis didn't set in, the grip on the lightsaber wasn't strong enough, and the lightsaber fell into the vents of Cloud City before the hand plummeted into the depths. So somewhere in Cloud City the lightsaber stayed, and some Ugnaughts were on maintenance duty and cleaning up, found it and sold it to someone. I mean, surprising that the Ugnaughts didn't just chuck it into their garbage compactor, as they seem to be doing, or their furnace thing. But yeah, at some point in the last 30 years, somebody managed to find that saber. Now, the person who's holding it is actually an alien, and it's a very female-like figure. The most likely person playing this character is Lupita Nyong'o. There's been quite a few rumours of her playing a CG character called Rose. You can see she's wearing sort of jewellery, bangles, bracelets, and her face is blurred out. I mean, you know, it's out of focus. And we only see a small fraction of it, but it's definitely an alien face and very sort of female features, very small nose, and she's handing Luke/Anakin's saber to a female figure. Now, obviously, the voiceover at this point says "my sister," so that combined with the fact that if we brighten up this image, we can see that the hand looks slightly older. I mean, this could have been either Daisy Ridley's character, Rey, or Leia. And yeah, I'm gonna say this is Leia, mostly because the clothing she's wearing is nothing like Rey's. She's wearing a ring, very large ring, on the hand, which is grabbing the saber. And if you brighten up the image, that hand definitely looks a lot older than Daisy Ridley's. And in fact, a few months ago, a piece of leaked concept art was doing the rounds, which, I mean, you know, I think this is pretty conclusive that we're looking at the same alien in the artwork here. The interesting thing, however, is that this piece of art seems to depict Rey and Finn and BB-8 in the scene, not Leia. So I still think that this is Leia in the scene, but that means that this alien character must play a relatively significant role, as she reoccurs in multiple scenes with the lead characters.
You have that power too.
This Christmas. And here we have a pretty good view of the new X-Wing. They're very reminiscent of the originals, of course, except that they employ more of the look of the original concepts by Ralph McQuarrie with the split engines. And also, and this is something that many people didn't notice in the first trailer, is that the wings fold up in a different way. They don't fold up on top of each other anymore, they kind of interlock, because they only have, like, if you can see, there's only half the wing, so the middle bit splits into a sort of interlocking shape. This is just a way of doing it slightly more slicker and streamlined, I guess. Yeah, it's absolutely great and fantastic to see X-Wings again, and X-Wings in a whole new context. You know, the shot we had in the original teaser of them buzzing across the lake was amazing. This is a different angle of it. I think it's possibly an angle which precedes the angle that we saw in the teaser in November, simply because the light is different, and the light here is more just daytime, whereas the light in the first teaser was more of a sort of setting sun. That might be down to the grading being different as well, so you know, maybe they've changed their mind on what time of day this sequence is set. But I'm gonna say that this angle is the first one in the sequence, and you know, this whole idea of having the X-Wings buzzing along a lake or a river or whatever this is very, very, very cool, for the simple reason that, to me, it references the Dam Busters, and the Dam Busters, classic movie, if you haven't seen it, is definitely one of the main influences on the original Death Star attack of A New Hope.
Look at the size of that thing.
My goodness, it's big, isn't it? I'm going to cut across the axis and try and draw their fire. I'll fly across the dam as you make your run and try and draw the flak off you.
How many guns do you think, Cole 5?
How many guns do you think there are, Trevor?
Say about 20 guns. Some on the surface, some on the towers.
I say there's about 10 guns. Some in the field and some in the towers. It's away! It's gone! We've done it! We haven't!
Negative.
It didn't go in.
Just impacting on the surface.
All the chatter and the way the whole thing is approached, very reminiscent of the Dam Busters, and this is even more of a tribute to the Dam Busters. So that's absolutely fantastic. Very brutal swing by Kylo Ren here, and his. I mean, everything about him screams brutal. His lightsaber is very, very, very sort of almost barbaric. One, because it's referencing a sort of claymore, double-handed medieval sword, which is very different from the kind of much more refined Japanese-influenced swords, lightsabers that we've had before. Secondly, because the beam is very erratic. It's like very electric and ill-defined, and who's either an amateur who's built his own lightsaber, or this is a much, much, much older relic that he's found. And that's really cool. In the background you can see here some of the stormtroopers. The one on the left is wearing a sort of shoulder guard that the same sort of shoulder guard we saw in A New Hope, which then subsequently disappeared in the next two films. And the environment seems to be that of somewhere which is burning, and I'm guessing that it's burning because of these Imperial troops, because we've seen images of flamethrower stormtroopers now, and I guess this is the result of their handiwork. No indication as to who Kylo Ren is fighting here, though. In many ways, the lighting here is exactly the same as that shot of Luke and R2, down to the embers flying around. So, you know, on the one hand, I think it's most likely the shot of R2 and Luke is completely unrelated. On the other hand, it could be quite interesting if the shot of Luke and R2 is the aftermath of this, as in, you know, the Imperial troops do their nasty business, leave, Luke and R2 arrive, and they've come here too late, and they just see the kind of grisly aftermath of this. In the same way, that would be very, very sort of very much mirroring the shot of Luke arriving too late to save his uncle and aunt, Owen and Beru, when he arrives at the farmstead and just sees their charred, smoking bodies after the stormtroopers have done their business. I mean, that would be really, really cool. I'm not sure that's the case, but who knows? And then we get the shot of Rey and Finn running away, escaping from a TIE fighter, which you can see in the top left corner. And TIE fighter's just shot at presumably where they were hanging out, possibly Rey's home, I don't know, but it seems to be a lucky escape. I love the fierce determination on Rey's face, and she evidently seems to be faster than Finn, who apparently is a stormtrooper, so again, maintaining the tradition of badly trained, slightly unfit, unhealthy stormtroopers who can't aim. Next we have a shot from the same scene as the previous view of Kylo Ren. Now we can see here that they appear to have rounded up some villagers. I mean, you can see a moisture evaporator, something very similar to a moisture evaporator here, with burning buildings all around them. So presumably the stormtroopers have landed in this village, have set everything alight, and they've rounded up the villagers, who I am guessing are about to be executed. And then suddenly Kylo Ren just turns around, presumably hears something behind him, and uses the Force. Now, that is interesting, because if I stick with this possibility of Luke and R2 being in the same location, maybe they don't arrive too late. Maybe they arrive and confront Kylo Ren, who then escapes, or takes Luke prisoner, maybe. Here we get a Triumph of the Will Imperial shot. This is, in many ways, this is a very cool shot. But what's interesting here is we get a range of different clues as to what's going on. So I keep saying the Imperial troops, from what we've seen, they're not actually called the Empire, they're called the First Order. And I think this is a good place to kind of discuss what the First Order entails. Now, the Empire collapsed. If you look at what's happening in the Middle East at the moment with Iraq and Syria, when dictatorships fall, there are power vacuums, and nothing is clear-cut anymore. With a dictatorship, you know there's a bad guy. When a strong leader falls, his successors just fight against each other, fight amongst themselves, and it all gets incredibly messy. And that is the feel I get from this trailer. That is the feel I get for the world that is being slowly unravelled in front of our eyes. The theme that JJ seems to be setting up here is what happens after dictatorships collapse. How different factions are created, which are either squabbling to kind of pick up the pieces and create a new version of the Empire. And I think this is one of those factions. The First Order sounds very reminiscent of the New Order, obviously, of Nazi Germany and the Empire, but also of a secret kind of like organization, a bit like the SS in Nazi Germany. The SS under Heinrich Himmler did a lot of stuff without Hitler knowing it, and at the same time the SS were the most fanatical Nazis. So when Nazi Germany collapsed after Hitler committed suicide and Berlin was taken over by the Soviets, the Allies had a huge kind of denazification process of Germany, whereby they kept encountering kind of independent SS fanatical cells that would just keep on fighting, and kept on kind of committing sabotage and leaving bombs and committing assassinations. So, the Nazis just didn't disappear altogether. A lot of Nazi leaders fled to South America. So I think the same thing is happening here. The First Order must be sort of a fanatical, secret order of the Empire, which has picked up the majority of the pieces and is creating a sort of neo-Nazi resurgent empire. Here we can see that the flag they're using is not the flag of the Empire. It's a new logo. It's obviously very reminiscent of the Imperial logo, but this one, it's almost like a stylized sun, possibly representing a new dawn for the Empire, a new dawn for the dark side. The other thing we can see is the new TIE fighters, which, are very similar to the originals, only with a sort of dark chrome exterior and these white solar panels instead of the black ones. White seems to be an even greater feature of these Imperial troops than in the originals. Obviously we have the Stormtroopers all white, but the difference between these Stormtroopers and the original Stormtroopers is the blasters that they're carrying are not just black. They have a lot of white features. Then we have the background of this planet seems to be some sort of icy mountainous planet, a bit like Hoth, but I don't think this is Hoth. In the background we can see a platform upon which appear a number of dignitaries, I suppose. Obviously, dead on centre is, I'm presuming, either the main bad guy of the film or somebody very high-ranking, possibly a general. If you zoom in, it looks a lot like an Imperial officer, only with a cloak. So I'm going to guess it's the military leader of the of this First Order. I think I'm going to speculate there's like 4 main bad guys in the film. There's going to be Kylo Ren, who represents the kind of Sith, the more mystical side of things. There's going to be the main arch nemesis, who's taking the place of the Emperor. I have no idea what or who that is, but I think that's Andy Serkis, whose voice we've heard in the last trailer. And then I would say there's going to be some sort of Admiral Piet type character, so the military leader of the troops, and this might be him. And the 4th main bad guy is the Chrome Trooper, which I'll get onto in a moment. Now, the other interesting thing about this shot is amongst the Stormtroopers, we actually see 2 Flame Troopers. Yeah, flamethrower troopers. There's one dead center, And you can notice that he's wearing a backpack, presumably to store all the fuel for the flames, and a different helmet, which is quite similar to the new snowtrooper helmet they've unveiled. And he's also wearing a sort of skirt in a similar way to the snowtrooper. There's also another flame trooper on the left side here, and you get a better view of the helmet. Then we get these two TIE fighters. This is a pretty great view of the TIE fighter. So as I said, the sort of greyish look of the originals is given way to a sort of dark, chromy look with white solar panels. Aside from that, it's pretty much the same TIE fighter. Now, I think, yeah, these TIE fighters are flying in formation. They're not chasing each other. At first I thought maybe one is chasing after the other, for the simple reason that in the following shot we see a TIE fighter escaping from a hangar and shooting at the stormtroopers, causing quite a hell of a lot of damage. I love this stormtrooper who's flying here. It's pretty great. And the question is, of course, who is piloting that TIE fighter? I guess, considering the following shot is of John Boyega looking panicked in a stormtrooper outfit, I think one could probably speculate that he's a stormtrooper who's possibly gone rogue, which is why in the initial teaser, the opening shot was of him looking extremely panicked and in distress on the desert, in the same stormtrooper outfit we see here. It's interesting to see that the helmet here has a blood-stained mark of somebody's hand. Considering his expression here, he seems slightly distraught, so it might be that that hand is of someone he knew, maybe a close friend of his. Then we get a shot very reminiscent of the classics of a Star Destroyer in space. There's obviously some sort of a large shuttle. It's slightly reminiscent of the shuttle Tidarian that we saw in Return of the Jedi, only with much, much bigger wings. I think this is some sort of troop transport, to be honest. Here's the new one of the new villains, the Chrome Trooper. Apparently this is Captain Phasma, who is played not by a guy, but by Gwendolyn Christie, who plays Brienne of Tarth in Game of Thrones. And that's pretty exciting, because I've seen a lot of people get very excited by the slightly Boba Fett sort of vibe that we're getting here, and they're saying, oh wow, this guy looks really tough. And it's not a guy, it's a girl, which is awesome. I love the cinematography here. Obviously the back panels, very, 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 very similar to the sets that we had in A New Hope, specifically on the Death Star. And I very much like the use of the red light on the left, balanced out by the red stripe on the cloak of the Chrome Trooper and the small red light on the right. All your attention is focused on a very imposing character. It's got very much the same vibe as Boba Fett, which is, the character just doesn't say anything. It's just the way the character carries itself and the way it is presented in the context of the background. You know that this character means business. Here's BB-8, which I'm still floored and amazed that is a real prop. That is such amazing craftsmanship. BB-8 is already classic Star Wars. It's got the 1970s and early 80s sort of vibe to the technology, but it's built using technology which wasn't even thought of in those days. It's a perfect combination of the old aesthetic mixed with brand new technology, and that is exactly what Star Wars should be. Here's Rey with a shot. I don't know if this is deliberate or not, but this shot is almost identical to a similar shot in A New Hope, when Luke has just seen his uncle and aunt killed, burning corpses, and he just turns away for a moment, then turns back to look at the camera, really determined, because he knows this is it. He has to leave his home and embark on this adventure with this mad old wizard. And this is exactly the same shot. In the left corner you can see some sort of structure, possibly a moisture evaporator of some sort, and we have exactly the same thing going on in Luke's shot in A New Hope. So I think this is the classic hero embracing his destiny shot. So this is Rey deciding she needs to leave her home, and she goes off on a journey with John Boyega. And interestingly, the role is reversed. It's actually her offering her hand to John Boyega's character to embark on the journey with her. She's probably the character I'm most excited to see. She really seems, for such a young actress who has basically no experience, she's really, really carrying this already. And she hasn't said anything yet. It's just purely in terms of the physicality of the character. She's carrying the movie. Some classic Millennium Falcon action. The way that the shots are constructed is so reminiscent of classic action sequences like the asteroid chase. It feels a lot more realistic than anything you saw in the prequels. I just love the fact that we're evidently going to see a lot more spaceship action than we saw in the prequels. And everything about this is harkening back to the originals. This seems to be like the Millennium Falcon is going inside the engine of a Superstar Destroyer. A Superstar Destroyer that's actually toppled over. So this is we're actually seeing the belly of it and the rear engines. And of course, the next shot is a very, very, very classic trilogy angle of a TIE fighter pilot. The TIE fighter pilot's been upgraded a bit. It's a different design. Still sufficiently familiar to not be jarring. I love the fact it's got these kind of red paint, these kind of red racing stripes on the helmet. It's very cool. Again, red being a very major color of this new Imperial faction, the First Order. And then this shot is just so Return of the Jedi. This is like almost exactly the same shot we saw when the Millennium Falcon was plunging into the second Death Star. And yeah, it's great. Yeah, and if the trailer ended here, that would be enough. But then we get this, which is just
Chewie, we're home.
I suddenly felt 7 years old, and I've been very worried about Harrison Ford because, quite frankly, he's been phoning in all his performances for the past 10 years at least. He's never seemed to be particularly excited about any of the roles he's been playing. Even Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones had some moments of greatness, and then there were some line deliveries like,
"You're a teacher?" Part-time.
Indiana Jones 4 is one of those films, along with the Star Wars prequels, which I wish never happened. And as far as I'm concerned, Indiana Jones ended with The Last Crusade, with them riding into the sunset. That was perfect. You didn't need another one. So I was slightly worried that the same thing was going to happen with Han Solo. And yeah, just this one shot completely alleviates my worries. He doesn't look like Harrison Ford here. He looks like Han Solo, older. And Chewie hasn't aged a bit, but that's because Chewbacca was already 200 years old in the original film, so another 30 years is not much in terms of Wookiee years, apparently. You've got to remember that he was also in Episode 3, The Revenge of the Sith, and in Revenge of the Sith he looked pretty much the same. He didn't look completely the same because the costume in Revenge of the Sith was awful, and it's great to see a costume that they're using now is much, much more reminiscent of the original. So it's still not quite exactly the same. There's something going on with his eyes which is a bit weird. I'm actually wondering if they haven't actually altered the eyes in CG to make them look more animalistic, because one of the problems of the original costume is that, it's both a problem and something that was quite cool because it added a lot of soul to it, is that every time you saw a close-up of Chewbacca in the original films, you could see Peter Mayhew's wonderful blue eyes, and it just looked like a man in a suit. But at the same time, it gave a sort of some character to Chewie. He had blue eyes and very human eyes. But it always took a bit away from the realism of the character. So I think maybe this is either a trick of the light or they've digitally altered his eyes. Now, if I brighten up the scene here, it looks less jarring, so maybe it's just the light. But it's great to see them both together. So there you go. That was my analysis of the trailer. I am completely stoked. They have me by the balls. I will give them all my money. I am still pretty amazed, that You know, I was a jaded Star Wars fan. I had given up after the prequels. I had no interest in the Clone Wars. A lot of people said the Clone Wars cartoons great. I tried to watch a few of them, just didn't get on board at all. I hate the whole prequel era. So I am pretty surprised that JJ and Kathleen Kennedy and everybody who's worked on this film have managed to get the vibe so completely right that I am a completely gullible fan again. And I just want to see it now. And slightly worried about the fact that we're going to have a Star Wars film every single year for the next decade, because I think that we'll probably burn out and it will water down the impact of having a Star Wars film. But hey, if they can maintain the quality that they have so far, I mean, if this trailer is any indication of what we're going to see for the next 10 years, then yeah, sure, go ahead. It's terrific. So yeah, there you go. Until next time.